There's a couple of people missing. I'm going to wait a second.
We got Janet here, so we're good. I can feel it.
While we're waiting for a minute or two, thanks to the folks who filled in. This was the longest Jeannie and I were away from Foothills since we took a sabbatical like 30 years ago. We were on vacation, and then I filled in at Levier's and then filled in at Columbine last week. Our good friend George Abbas, who is here for the Foothills at 50, doesn't have any internal pulpit help. Unlike us at Foothills, we have like five guys that can fill in and preach. They don't have anybody at Foothills. Come on, Barb and Barry, you're holding the whole class up. And Chris too. But Chris tried to go along the wall so she wouldn't be noticed. I'm waiting for Mike Parecka. Who knows where he is? Here comes Ralph. What's that? Oh, Mike Parecka? Oh. Anyway, we're going to get back to Proverbs this morning, and we're going to wrap up the topic of money, which we left off a few weeks ago. Just as a brief review, because we haven't dealt with Proverbs in a few weeks, Mishalah is the Hebrew word for proverb. It's a wise saying or precept, a concise, pithy thought, very easy to remember, a didactic or teaching sentence, short, popular saying that effectively expresses some commonplace truth. It's not a set of simple steps to a happy life for quick consumption. Like I read the Proverbs and my life works real well all of a sudden. What it is the Proverbs must be, it's a proverb is a poetic art form that instills wisdom in me as I wrestle with it over time and circumstance. One of my little devotional habits is I've done this for years and years and years. I read the proverb of the day. Like today is the 30th of August, so I'll read Proverbs 30 today. So I've read the Proverbs I don't know how many times, but you read them over and over again and think about them, and that's the way they're to be ingested as wisdom like sinks into your spirit. They're not to be understood as absolutes, but rather generalizations. Sometimes the wicked do prosper and live long, and the righteous person does not prosper and dies young. If we see Proverbs as absolutes, we'll become disillusioned with God and the Scriptures, because we'll say, well, wait a minute, I live righteously, I give faithfully, I'm good to my family, and my business struggles, and the guy next door is a cheat. He cheats in his customers, he doesn't go to church, he doesn't care a hill of beans about God, and he's prospering. So the Proverbs aren't right. You can't take them as absolutes. They are generalizations. If I do this, in most cases, that will happen, but not always. So that's where we are. Okay, and we left off dealing with money. It's a cliche, I understand, but Scripture speaks so much about money matters because money does matter. I would guess in my 40 years of pastoral ministry that in 90% at least of marital counseling where there's conflict, poor stewardship is often at the heart of the problem. When you have money problems in your relationship, the relationship is stressed and tends to break down. Money, remember, as we said weeks ago, is portrayed as a force that will pull me away from God if not handled correctly. Some examples, for example, is 1 Timothy 6, where Paul writes and he says, the love of money And a lot of people in our culture love money. The love of money is a root of many forms of evil. Then we have the rich prince who was challenged by Jesus to sell everything you have and come follow me. And he can't do it. He can't let go of his money. He can't let go of that which is most important to him. Lazarus and the unnamed prosperous man who had no use for humanity during his lifetime, but he loved money. And how about Judas? He pilfered the money bag and grabbed 30 pieces of silver. And we talked about borrowing and lending. God encourages lending in the Old Testament. We are not to charge interest and take advantage of people's, our brother and sister's misfortune. And we said that, we're not ethnic Israel. Israel had a certain set of standards they were given by God with money and so on. But the general principle is, if you have need and I can meet it, I should. And I think the better way to go, and we talked this through a few weeks ago, instead of lending you something, is to give it to you. So there can be no hard feelings, no resentment or anything. If you're slow in paying it back, that kind of thing, it's better if I have resources and you need them and I can help you, then I should help you. So we're going to get back to money in just a second, but I mentioned George Abbas, our good friend over at Columbine. I got to speak there last week, and George and I are big baseball guys, as some of you are too. I've been a Yankee fan since I was a little guy, 9 years old. George Abbas is a big Chicago Cubs guy. Now, recently, George was in Louisville, Kentucky. And while he was there, he visited Barb Mathias's birthplace, where they have a little shrine outside the house where she was born. You're from Louisville, right?
I wasn't born there.
Oh. I thought it was Louisville. But anyway, while George was in Louisville, Kentucky, he visited the Hillerich and Bradsby Louisville Slugger factory where they make all the baseball bats for the pros. So, knowing that I'm a big baseball guy, George brought me not only is it a Louisville Slugger, but it is a special edition, limited edition of the George Herman Babe Ruth bat. Watch this. This is the kind of bat I used in Babe Ruth League all the way into high school. It's the same kind of bat that Mike Pareca's father would chase him around the house with after he saw Mike's report card. And so for a mere, look at that, Babe Ruth. For a mere $2, you, after class, can hold this bat for 30 seconds as long as your hands are clean.
Can we get a photo?
George Babe Ruth. What do you think of that?
Can we get a photo?
There you go. Hold on to that for me.
How did you know it was my birthday?
Hold on to that for me, but don't get it dirty.
He's gonna charge interest.
Yeah, yeah. If you break it, George has to buy me another bat, so you have to pay interest. All right. Not during the class. Just put it down, and people can look at it later. Well, just to see how strong your willpower is. All right, we're going to look at Proverbs 6, the first 5 verses, as we wrap up the topic of money. Here's what Solomon warns against. He says, "My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, have given your pledge for a stranger, if you are snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself, for you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, and plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. So, what is Solomon's basic gist here? What's he warning against? What do you think?
Don't give a pledge, cover someone else.
Exactly. Yeah, he's warning against what we call in today's world co-signing on notes. Why is co-signing generally dangerous? Why is it a bad idea? If you ever listen to Dave Ramsey, he is death on co-signing. Yes, I mean you're pledging your assets against someone else's debt, and if they can't repay it, you're the one. You're the one that goes to debtor's prison or get your house taken out from under you. So there's some other reasons too. Why else is co-signing generally a bad idea? That's one I hadn't put down, but that's really a good observation, Mike. In that if I get you to sign, if I want to go out and buy a new car, and I need you to sign for it, it kind of takes some of the accountability away from me, even psychologically, maybe even subconsciously, where I know, well, if I can't pay, well, Mike will pay. Ralph? Yes, yes. Dave Ramsey, if you ever listen to his podcasts, people call in all the time and say, yeah, I co-signed for so-and-so, my father, my son, my daughter, my neighbor. They didn't pay. Now we don't talk to each other. You know, I got stuck. Mike? Yes. Right. It can definitely put strain on relationships, absolutely. And remember, the reason you're co-signing for someone is they can't afford to buy what they're buying. That's why they're doing it. They can't afford it. So they're tapping into your resources, your credit, so they can buy something they can't afford. So another thing, it may be encouraging foolish stewardship, as Mike said and Ralph said, a potential fracturing of relationship. Something else, it freezes my own ability to borrow if necessary, because when I co-sign for you, for example, if you want to buy that Louisville Slugger and you have to get me to co-sign for you, and then I want to buy something, that counts against my credit, because if you buy a $65,000 car and I co-sign, creditors see that $65,000 as my debt as well as yours. So it could freeze my ability to borrow if I have to in an emergency. Solomon himself may have had to judge many co-signing defaults. And so he warns us for a reason. But remember, I said that Proverbs are generalizations, not absolute. Might there be a time, a legitimate time, that co-signing is acceptable?
Well, we did something with our kids. There was a point in each of their lives as adults, and we didn't co-sign. We gave them the money with the understanding they would pay it back if they could. But we were ready in giving it to them to kiss it off. might not see that money. No co-signing.
So you just gave it freely and said, if you can pay me back, pay us back, fine. If you can't. But what about actual? Yes. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, if you couldn't hear in the back, Jeannie was talking about if you were here for the Foothills at 50, both on Friday night, Nancy Blanks was sharing her experiences at Foothills and said, you know, in the infant days of Foothills, we co-signed, we put our house up as collateral to be able to buy this building. She and Charlie were one of 5 families, Gordon Lewis and Doris were another one, that because the church, the bank would not give us money to buy the church building unless 5 people co-signed and put their houses up as collateral. So, I mean, that was a bold, faithful move. Now, Proverbs warns against co-signing as a general principle, but the people believed enough that we should be here and we should have a building because we were renting this building from a church whose pastor lived right across the street, and they found another place to meet, and they wanted to sell the building, and we were already here renting it, and we had the opportunity to buy it, and we bought it for $186,000, and that was a lot of money in 1982. No, and Jeannie and I wasn't the pastor. Yes, that's a good point too, because if it defaulted, even if it defaulted, it wouldn't fall on one person. And what would happen if we had defaulted and the church had folded, those 5 families would have been responsible to pool their money and pay the mortgage until the building got sold. But they felt, I was a seminary student at the time, Jeannie and I, and the building got bought, and then a year or 2 years later maybe, Pastor Ken resigned and went to the East Coast, and we had about, I don't know, 30 people maybe in the church, 35 people. Were you here yet? And, you know, the people that had put their houses up were a little like, and so anyway, by God's grace, it panned out, and we raised money over the years, and we paid the mortgage off many, many years ago, and it turned out okay. But as a general principle, Solomon says, stay away from this business of co-signing. And you guys brought up good observations. Let's go to another proverb. This has to deal with the principle of generous and responsible kingdom giving. Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Solomon says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Why? Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. So how might I understand this counsel in light of my responsibility to the local church? How does this fit from Proverbs 3?
I'm hearing something in that. Giving to the Lord the first priority of the month. If you wait for the end of the month, it might not have anything left.
Yeah, here you go, God. I've got like $20 left. Here you go. It's he said the first fruits. When you gather your crops, Before you do anything else, before you sell them, distribute them, do anything else, honor God with it. Give faithfully.
Where your money is, heart.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. How about this? And this is where there's some debate. Is the Old Testament principle of tithing still valid for us who live under the new covenant? It's never explicitly called for in the New Testament. Yeah, tithing was a guideline. In fact, there were 3 tithes in the Old Testament, not just one. You had to give 3 tithes to the priest, the temple, and something else, I forget, but there were 3 tithes, so you had to give 30% of your crops or 30% of your income. Yes, yes. Yeah, then that's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians, Paul loves a cheerful giver, not under duress or obligation, like, oh man, I have to give today. I hate this, you know. I heard one time many years ago a story about I don't know if it was a missionary or a pastor that visited this African village somewhere, and they had a bunch of believers that would meet in a big hut, and they used to take an offering. Like we have baskets in the back now, but we used to take an offering. But when they took their offering, they would play music, they would play drums, and each person would dance to the front with their money and drop it in a plate, like as a joyous expression of giving. So we're going to start doing that next Sunday. Taylor's going to play, and everybody gets to dance to the front and drop a check in the offering plate. Anyway, it's like you said, it's not begrudging. You defeat the whole purpose if you're resentful, like, oh gosh, I have to give. Remember, it's not explicitly called for in the New Testament letters, but it's what Jewish believers would have been familiar with. And Jesus commends tithing when he's talking to the religious leader. He says, you know, you tithe your mint and dill and all these other things. That's good, but what you really need to do is love God from the heart. Why do you think none of the New Testament authors like Peter or Paul, James, why do you think they do not call for tithing? Why wouldn't they, do you think? Could be. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and it's not, and we have to be careful with that because the prosperity people run wild with a verse like this. You know, offer to God from their first fruits, and then your barns will overflow. Like, and they'll say, oh, you have to just give your seed money, give more and more and more, and then you're going to be fabulously wealthy. That's not what Solomon is saying here. And remember, these are generalizations, not absolutes. But your point is good, Ralph. And then, Harvey, and then Ralph.
It's an interesting study in the book of Acts. When the church was born, people would sell their property and bring it into a common
Yes.
process to make sure everybody's need was
Yes.
met. So the birth of the church gives
Yes.
but it would be difficult, I think, to apply what went on at that time to today's economy.
Yes, and there's a difference in Scripture between historical narrative and didactic teaching. Historical narrative is non-repeatable events, like David and Goliath was a historical event. That didn't get repeated over and over again. In the New Testament, when they came together in that communal sense, that was to get the church going in the infant stages, but it didn't go on like that forever. The church grew and expanded under different economies, different governments. The spirit of that is still alive in that we should be helping each other, but we don't have to do exactly what the deacons and all did in the first century. Ralph?
It wasn't taught because in the early church would have already been an ingrained practice and teaching.
Yes. It's like they didn't have to be taught about it because that's what they did. It could have been just a natural transition, like, oh, we're Jews, we tithe, and the church is being born. Our responsibility is to tithe. Did you have something, Janet, before? Yes. It's the Lord's house, and we give just because we're a family.
I think a mental picture that's been given to me in the past is have your hand open so that God can freely give and He can also freely take. Just have an open book about yourself to God and finances.
Yes. Yes. Did you have something more? Okay. A word about, we mentioned foothills and co-signing and so on, but let me just give you a little primer here. We, Foothills, are an independent, autonomous evangelical church. We are part of an association. We are not part of a denomination. We don't pay dues like, for example, to the Southern Baptist Convention. We don't pool our money, and so in a time of need, a Southern Baptist church can tap into the Southern Baptist Convention and get some financial help. We are an association. We voluntarily associate with other like-minded, like doctrine, and like theological churches. But we don't get assistance from anywhere else. For us to pay our bills, to pay our staff, to support missionaries, everything comes from us internally. If we depend on the generosity, the sacrifice, the regular giving of God's people here at Foothills Fellowship. We don't get it from anywhere else. We're not the Roman Catholic Church. We're not the Episcopal Church that has a diocese that can help them. We're not Anglicans. We're not the Southern Baptists. And I'm not saying that any of that is that it's wrong to be part of a denomination. I'm just saying we are not. We're an association. So everything depends on the people of Foothills Fellowship for us to survive and to thrive. Tim Monahan, who ministered, he was one of our supported missionaries for 35 years in Naples. He was the first person to ever share the gospel with me when we were working as surveyors. And when I started to go to church, when Jeannie and I met, one of the first things he said is, you have to start tithing. And I came out of the Roman Catholic Church where literally on the rare occasions that I went to church, my mother would give me a quarter, to throw in the basket. And I resented that. And then suddenly Tim says, oh no, well, you have to tithe. You should start tithing. And that was like throwing me in ice water, the shock to my economic system.
In Austria, there was a church tax, and a member of the Catholic or the Lutheran church had to give so much, partially determined by the government. This was started when Hitler was back in power. Put this rather crudely. And the dummies
Yeah. Remember Wesley's motto, make all you can, save all you can, and give all you can.
Your reference to our autonomous position with regard to an outside entity, the flip side of it is we are not obligated by any outside organization
Right.
to respond to their directive.
Right, exactly. We, for example, at Foot, our position is we're off the subject of money here for a second, but we are complementarians. We believe that women have roles to play in the church, but they should not be pastors and elders. If, for example, Rocky Mountain Church Network, that is our association, were to come out and say, you know, we think it's a good idea to have women pastors and women elders, and we want you at Foothills, the next person you hire needs to be a woman as an associate pastor or pastor. If you're part of a denomination and you have like a bishop presiding over you, they can do that. Or they can say, for example, I remember we were in a recreation center years ago out in Golden working out, and I went in the sauna, and a guy was in there with me, about my age, and we got to talking, and he was a Methodist pastor from Iowa, and he said that he lost his ministry because his bishop said that all the churches in his diocese had to acknowledge same-sex marriages. And he said, I'm a Christian, I follow the scriptures, I can't do that. And so he lost his ministry. We're not in that situation, like you just said. We make our own autonomous decisions here. And if Rocky Mountain Church Network or we decided differently on doctrine or theology, it would be our responsibility to remove ourselves from them if we had to. We're talking about giving and generosity. What impedes or derails the spirit of radical, sacrificial giving in a believer's life? If it's so important and it's so necessary, what derails the spirit of sacrificial giving?
The level of priority.
Level of priority. Other things matter more, instead of him saying, honor the Lord with the first of your wealth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Accumulation. We live in a spirit of accumulation. I want more, 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 and that can derail my giving as well. Yes. Yes. Any other factors that impede the spirit of generosity in a believer's life? Financial hardship. Yep. Yeah, sometimes we hit downturns economically and we can't give as much as we would like to. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the woman who gives next to nothing is commended by Jesus. And all these people that drop all this big money into, but don't be discouraged about giving a lot. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that if that's all you have, and it's from the heart, like you were saying back there, John, God is pleased with that. Let me give you some other, of course. Yes. Yes. Yeah, God is not a stern master. Like if you hit a spot where you can't give as much as you would like to, he's going to punish you, that kind of thing. There's biblical ignorance. A lot of times Christians don't know what Scripture has to say about giving and generosity. The fear of want. Oh, gee, if I start giving sacrificially, maybe, well, what if I don't have enough? And David says in Psalm 37, I have been young, now I am old, and I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. I've never seen God punish somebody for their generosity. We have credit abuse. Some Christians are so loaded down with credit that they can't give because they bought so many things that they probably shouldn't have had. And then Miroslav Volf, who was a Yugoslavian, when there used to be a Yugoslavia, he's a theologian, and he was talking about giving and finances, and he refers to a group of people called the not enough people, meaning nothing is ever enough. I have to have more and more and more, and it depletes my sense of generosity. Ralph? Yes, I think it all goes hand in hand. I think obviously we can't survive as a church without financial giving, but there are many people in this congregation who are always here doing something, helping, serving, cleaning, repairing, doing all kinds of things. So there's that giving as well. That's a good point. Wesley, again, says, I will have considered my life a failure if I die with more than 5 English pounds in my pocket. Meaning, at the end of my life, I will have wanted to give it all away. I'm not, Dolly Parton died, we know. I was never a fan. I'm not a country person, never really liked Dolly Parton very much, but she gave a lot of money to a lot of philanthropic, teaching kids how to read, giving kids books, gave a lot of money away. I don't know where she gave everything, but she was a very generous type person, and that's how Wesley was. He said, when I die, I don't want to be like, Scrooge McDuck with $1 billion in the bank vault. I want to have blessed people. Billy Graham said, give me 5 minutes with a person's checkbook, and I can tell you where their heart is with God. And Luther said, not Lex Luthor, Martin Luther, said, I have had much money pass through my hands. Whatever I have used on myself was gone with the using. Whatever I have given to the kingdom remains mine forever. Okay. And also, I can tell you this, in my years of ministry, I have never known a radically generous Christian that regretted it. I have never, in my pastoral experience, had somebody come to me and say, I've tried to be really generous towards the kingdom, and boy, God punished me good. They always say, I was blessed in my generosity. I loved it. Like this bat. I was going to give to the church, but I can't because I bought the bat.
There are many who have millions today that fall into a philanthropic mindset, and they want the public to look at them and do well, but it's a tax evasion thing. They can give away a lot of money. They look good.
Yes.
But it isn't from the heart that they're giving.
Yeah, and you ever wonder why celebrities, you have to know that so-and-so gave $1 million to Nepal relief, they always have to, and what does Jesus say? He says, don't let your right hand know what your left is doing. Just be generous. God, your Father, sees you. He will reward what you do. Yeah, that's the not enough people. And I heard I don't know if it was Pastor Ryan said this to me. He quoted somebody and he said, if you need help, ask a poor person, because they are the most generous. The more you get, the more you hoard and hold on to, and it seems like the less you have, the more generous you are.
There's a famous quote attributed to John D. And newspaper guy asked him, how much is enough? He says, just a little more than I have. Wow.
Yes, just a little more. I'm going to wrap up our talk on a conversation on money by reading one of my favorite texts. This is a man called Agur, A-G-U-R, and he writes in Psalm 30. He says, 2 things I ask of you. He's talking to God. Deny them not to me before I die. The first is, remove far from me falsehood and lying. Help me to be a truthful, honest person with integrity. Secondly, and this ties into us this morning, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I become full and deny you and say, well, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. So what do you think Agur is advocating for? What's he asking for from God? Contentment. Just make, like Hebrews 13 says, let your life be free from the love of money, being content with what you have. He's not saying don't get a raise at work or don't invest and make money. He's just saying be content. Live within what God gives you. Don't always be envying. Don't always be money grubbing and all that. Just be content. Just give me enough, because if you give me too much, I can forget about you and say, who's God? I don't need it. I've got all this money. Like The Simpsons, the cartoon, The Simpsons. I never watched The Simpsons. I loved cartoons growing up, but The Simpsons were like kind of a raw, edgy thing. And anyway, Bart Simpson is sitting there and it's Thanksgiving time. And the father or somebody says, we should now thank God for the food on the table. And Bart says, why should we thank God? You're the one who worked for it, Dad. Like you forget that God gives you the breath of life and the ability to work and make money. So, right, no, he's not smart. No. He's saying, be content with your daily. What does Jesus pray for in the Our Father? Give us this day our daily bread. He doesn't say, oh Lord, this day help me to hit the lottery so I can live like a prince. It's just give me my daily bread. Just give me the things I need to live decently and to be generous and responsibility. Live simply, which is a very difficult sell in our culture. Calagene mentioned the endless stores we have. I remember when Ryan was getting married and some of his buddies from Scotland came over. They were stunned. They have no box stores. He took them to Target, and they were claiming that these guys were from Scotland. They said, well, we're socialists. We believe in this, that. And they went to Target, and they said, now we're capitalists. It's true. That's what they said. He took them to Walmart, and they have nothing like that in Edinburgh. And he couldn't believe the stuff that we have here that's available. Yes. Yes. All the people that came over for the World Cup. They went crazy. Yeah. Because they're told elsewhere how bad America is, and everybody in America welcomed them or were kind to them and took them out to eat. They were stunned. Yeah. Okay. And then he says, you know, if you don't give me enough, I would be tempted to steal. Not like rob a bank, but too much work, risky investments, minimum kingdom support, cheat on my taxes, customers, essentially. The Quakers would say, tell me what you think you need, and I will show you how to live without it. I'm going to finish by reading Keller. During our little devotional time every morning, Jeannie and I read from God's Wisdom for Navigating Life. Really a good book on Proverbs. Tim Keller and his wife wrote this. He passed away a few years ago, but has a ton of wisdom. Let me read this for you, and then we'll dismiss. But first, you can rent the bat for 30 seconds if you have a couple of bucks on you. He says, we naturally take credit for wealth. Instead of acknowledging the enormous number of factors outside your control that brought the money to you, even with all your work, you attribute it all to your cleverness and discipline. Thus, you become wise in your own eyes, the essence of foolishness. This pride will lead you to put too much faith in your instincts. You won't listen to others. Making money does not make you a great judge of character or wise about everything, but many wealthy people feel it does. Bernard of Clairvaux is reported to have once said, to see a man humble under prosperity is the greatest rarity in this world. The ultimate danger of wealth is it leads us to ask with Agur, who is the Lord? Why do I need God? Jesus insisted that we do not feed and clothe ourselves any more than the birds or the flowers do. It is only when, in the Spirit's power, we realize we are saved only by grace that we can see God's grace in everything and escape this deadly power of money. So, Lord, how quickly we take credit in our hearts for a little bit of financial success. So, Lord, I thank you for any successes, any goals attained, and any blessings I wasn't capable of attaining, and yet you sent them to me. I am grateful. Amen. Okay, let's wrap up. John, would you bless us back there? Amen. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy a beautiful Sunday. I don't know. Don't hit Calagine with it.